Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the winter Photoshop actions, and we're also going to be creating winter scenes from scratch. Okay, so there's a few different examples we're going to be working through, and this video is going to go for quite a long time, so you can click through the video to get the different sections that you want to focus on. So firstly, I'm going to be working with this photo here, and we're going to be using the snow action and the fog and mist brushes that are included in the download. To recreate this scene. We're also going to be using the Camera Raw filter to adjust the lighting and fine tune the design. After that, I'm going to work with the rain action that's in the download, and we're also going to be applying the rain splash brush. You can see there where the rain is hitting our subject. Again, we'll use the Camera Raw filter to adjust the lighting. Next, we're going to work with this photo, and I'll include a link to this down in the description so you can follow along. And I'm going to recreate this scene here, so we're going to completely flip it from this to a complete winter scene. Okay, and then next we're going to work with this photo, and using the same techniques as this, we're going to recreate this. Alright. After that, we're going to use the day to night action, and I'm just going to show you simply how it works without any adjustments to the layers. So I'll show you with that photo there. Next, I'm going to use this photo. Again, going to use the day to night action. Also going to use the snow action, and I'm going to show you how we can keep some of our original light source after you've played the day to night action. Okay, and then lastly, going to work with this one, and again we're going to use the day to night action, but we're going to use the Camera Raw filter to create some additional lighting. So you can see how the light is passing down through here and it's sort of trickling down through the creek here. That's it. So there's a whole heap to get through, so I'm going to get straight into it. Close these down. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is load up the actions panel. Okay, so I need to load up the action that was included with the download. So go to Window, Actions, and it'll pop up onto the side here. So if you just click on this icon here, click on that and go to Load Actions, and select the winteractions.atn file. Okay, and it pops up here. You see in the folder there, you've got all the different actions. Okay, so firstly, I want to work with snow. Okay, and I'll go through all these one by one as the tutorial goes on. But simply, all you need to do to apply snow is select it and click play, and this action will take about anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to play back. Depends on the size of your photos. So I will just speed this playback up a little bit, and I'll do that quite often throughout this tutorial. Whenever there's a bit of loading time, that I'll just speed that section up. Okay, so right at the end of the action, you'll get just this window that pops up with just some tips. You can read that if you want. I'm just going to be talking through this anyway, so it's just a reminder of some things to play around with after you've run the snow action. So you just click on stop, and the action is already done. So I'll close the actions panel, and you can see onto the side here, it's created this snow folder. Okay, so if I zoom in here, you can see the details of the snow. So I'll go inside the snow folder, and I'll just talk about how I've set this up. Okay, so all these layers in blue are the snow layers, all the snow particles. So you've got the small ones down in here, and then you've got medium size, and these two are large. Okay, so you can move them around, you can duplicate them, rotate them. But I've also got all these yellow layers where you can adjust their brightness. Okay, so for example, if I go down the bottom here and I double click on this brightness layer, you want to play around with these handles here. So as I drag these handles around, so you can bring on more small particles, you can turn up their brightness like that, or you can crush their brightness with this one here. Same with all these other ones. I can click on this top one here, these large particles. I can drag this up, which you can see increases the brightness of those larger particles. Okay. If you want the snow to appear more prominent, you just select the snow folder and hit Control or Command J. Okay, that'll duplicate it. if you want somewhere between, you can just lower the opacity of the folder. So currently it's at 100. I can drag that down to 0, and then bring it up to say 50%. So yeah, so if you duplicate it and it's too strong, just lower the opacity down to that folder to get to a level that you like. Okay, so if I go back into the actions panel, alright, we've got all these layers here, okay? So firstly, colors, we've got color 1 to 21, and the way they work is if you just select one and click play, it'll apply that color option, okay? And it's always best to apply the color option above your snow or your rain, so that the snow or rain adopts those colors. So you can just go down and click play on these actions and it'll apply that color. If you want to play around with the settings, you can go inside the color folder and adjust these layers here. But I've also included this action here called create all colors, and the way that works is if you just click play, it will it'll play all those color options and it'll stack them in the layer panel here. So all you need to do is turn on the visibility for that layer and go down and flip them on. Okay, it's as simple as that. So what I might do, let me just look at the original photo here. So we're going for some bluish tones, so I'm just going to hunt for some blue tones. So this one here I'll turn on, and I don't need to use it at 100% opacity, so I can just click and drag that opacity down to 0 and increase it just a little bit. And I can keep going down here. Maybe I want to use a little bit of number 4. I'll go down the bottom here. Maybe a little bit of 20. Let's keep going up here. I think that'll do. So when you've picked a few colors out, you don't want to keep all these folders hanging around. So what I like to do is shift select all the folders. So select the top one, shift select the bottom one, then hold down Control or Command, and then click on the ones that you want to keep, and that will deselect them, just like that. Then hit delete on the keyboard, and that will just remove all those other folders that you don't need. So what we've got here is our color layers, folders. So what we need to do now is, or what I want to do is apply these mist and fog brushes. Okay, so they are included in the downloads. So if you just hit B on the keyboard and right click, okay, what I want to do is replace all these default Photoshop brushes with the ones in the download. So if you click on this icon here and go to replace brushes, select the winterbrushes.avr file, and you'll see that you get all these cloud, mist and fog brushes. And right down the bottom here is also the rain splash brush that I'll get onto in the next example. So what I want to do here is right at the bottom is create a new layer. Control Shift N or Command Shift N, create a new layer. And what I like to do is for each different cloud brush to add, I want to put it on a new layer. That way I can move them around individually and rotate them. So if I just select one, okay, make sure I'm using a white brush. I'll look at my opacity here. I might just crank it up to 100 for a second. So I'll just apply it here on the canvas. So whoops, just going to turn off auto select. Okay, so here is my fog. So because I've got it on a separate layer, I can hit Control or Command T and start rotating it and scaling it. So I can move that one here. So what I like to do, I like to apply the brushes firstly at 100% opacity, so I can clearly see where they are. And at the end, we'll sort of lower the opacity right down, so it just sort of fits the scene a bit more naturally. So I'll create a new layer. Control Shift N or Command Shift N. Hit B. Grab another brush. And one thing to look out for when you're applying brushes, if I apply this brush in the corner here, right, and now if I start moving that layer, you'll see how it's clearly chopped off. You don't really want that. So what I like to do is always apply the brush in the middle of the artboard, so right in the middle. That way you can move it around and it doesn't have any hard edges. So I'm just going to move this one maybe about there. I'm just going to erase that bit around her face. Create another layer. Let's grab this one and we'll put this up the top here. Create a new layer. Grab this one. I'm going to scale this right up and move that down the bottom. Create another layer. We'll grab, say, this one. Rotate that a bit. Now grab this one. Oops, I'll do that again. One more. Let's try this one. No, I'm going to delete that and create another. Use a different brush. I'll just use this one. Just going to raise that hard edge. Okay, so now I've got all the clouds on a different layer. I can move them around freely to reposition them. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lower the opacity of these down. I'm just going to select them all, shift select them all, and drag this opacity to 0 and just increase it just a little bit. So that way you get just a subtle hint of the clouds. Okay, that'll do. So I might just group all these, shift select them, control command G, and I'll just call this clouds. Now I'll just open up the original set. Okay, so what I've done here is added some snow to her hair. Okay, and this next step we're going to use constantly throughout the rest of the examples. So what we want to do is create a new layer. Again, Control Shift N or Command Shift N. Create it just above your background layer. And if I just hit B, I'll grab our soft brush. Make sure it's white because we're painting snow. So if I just start brushing over her hair like this. Okay. Now the trick here is all in the layer style. So if you double click on this layer, okay, and you want to focus on this slider here. Okay, so just move this here. Now the key is if I start dragging this handle here to the right, you'll see how it starts disappearing from her hair. Okay, so I keep dragging, you see it almost disappears. And so the way this works is that, so I'll just drag to here, it looks at the underlying layer, okay, and it will remove, so this white layer will only appear within this color range in the layer below. So it's going to remove the white from this color layer, from this color range on the underlying layer. So if I start dragging the white to the left, okay, this white layer is only going to appear in this little bit of color range on the layer below, so in the darker areas. So if I bring this one all the way to the right, you'll see this white layer is only going to appear in this color range on the layer below. So I'll just start dragging this to the right and I'll get to something that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll click OK. Now if I zoom in here, you'll notice that it looks quite harsh. I want to smooth that out quite a bit. So if I just zoom back out, I'll just double click on this layer. If you hold down Alt or Option and click and drag these handles, you'll see that it smooths out our result. It creates a bit much better blend. So you can hold down Alt or Option and start dragging these two around just to get something that looks good. Okay, so maybe there. I'll click OK. If there's any snow that sort of you've brushed on that's gone over the edges, simply create a mask. Grab a black brush because we want to hide this layer. and start brushing over those areas. Okay, and at any time you want to adjust this snow, all you need to do is double click on the layer and play around with these handles. So if I want more snow, I can just drag that in. Okay. What I also like to do is, again, just double click and add a color overlay, and I just like to apply just a bit of an off-white to the snow, just so that it's not pure white. Okay. Now I'm going to create a new layer again, Control-Shift-N or Command-Shift-N, and I'm going to now paint some more white on the shoulder pad here. So it's best to create, best to break it up into sections. That way we can control the amount of snow on that particular area. Okay. So I'm just going to double click on this again. I'm going to drag this handle to the right, and you can see how we immediately get that appearance of snow building up on the shoulder pads. So I'll drag it to about there. Hold down Alt or Option to smooth that out. Something like that. Okay, and if you wanted to add more snow to the area where it hasn't been applied too well, you can again just create another layer and focus on that, just on that particular area. So I can just paint some white in here. Okay, double click and again play around with these handles. Something like that. And if there's a build up of snow that you don't think looks good, just use a mask and just grab a black brush and brush that away, just like that. Okay, I'll move on to the arm guard here. So create a new layer, start brushing, double click, drag this in, Alt or Option to smooth it out, and I think that looks pretty good. I might just add one more on the cape here, and I'm just going to focus in the highlights because that is where the light is hitting, so where the snow should be falling and touching. So I'm going to just brush white through here, down here. Okay. Yeah. Just like that. Okay, looking good. So I'm just going to group these layers. Control G, Command G, and I'll just call this Painted Snow. Right, now the next step we're going to work on is focusing on the lighting and just making everything pop a bit more. And we're going to use the Camera Raw filter, which is in Filter, Camera Raw filter. So you'll notice that if I select a folder and go to Camera Raw filter, this window will open but nothing will appear. The Camera Raw filter applies effects to that particular layer. So if I just select Clouds 8 and go to Filter, Camera Raw filter, you can just see the clouds there, but we want to affect the entire design and we don't want to flatten, we don't want to merge all our layers onto just the backgrounds. We want to keep all these files and layers here in case we want to make some adjustments. So what we're going to do is select the top layer and we want to merge our design onto one layer. Okay, but we don't want to flatten these layers. So just hold down Control, Shift, Alt, E, or Command, Shift, Option, E, and you'll see that it has put our design up the top here on one layer. So now when we go to Filter, Camera Raw filter, we get a preview of our entire design. Okay, so I'll just talk to you about the simple use of the Camera Raw filter with this example, and as the tutorial goes on, I'll jump into more of these other tools. And yeah, so firstly, when you open up your, when this window opens, you'll see you've got these options to the side, and you can do simple things like, I can adjust the temperature, make this cooler, make it warmer. So this just makes this a little bit cooler. Okay, add a little bit of blue. You can change the brightness through this exposure handle here. So let's have a look. I'll drag this a little bit to the right. Contrast, add a little bit of contrast. Here you can play around with the highlights. You can boost them or crush them down. Shadows, you can brighten up the shadows. The whites, similar to the highlights, and the blacks, same with that. So let's boost the blacks up a little bit. Clarity is like sharpening. If I drag that all the way to the right, you'll see how everything is much more detailed, a lot more contrast being applied to it. Drag it all the way to the left, see it softens everything out, adds like a soft glow over everything. So I'm just going to add a little bit of clarity. Vibrance, it's a bit like saturation. It'll just sort of really make the colours pop a lot more. Saturation, I'll just lower it down a little bit. Okay, so if you hit this button here, or Q on the keyboard, you get a comparison against the before and the after. So on the left here is the before, which is before we open up the camera raw filter. On the right here, you can see the changes that we've just made. If you keep hitting Q, it shows it in a different way, so before and after, like a split screen, stacked on top of each other. Again, another split screen, and back to the original. So there's a few other things you can play around with here. You've got this tone curve option. If you click on that, you can target specific tones throughout your image. So we've got the highlights here. You can drag this handle around like that, and that will, you can see if you look at this curve here, as I adjust this handle, it is affecting the highlights. The highlights are at the top here, shadows down the bottom. So play around with those. I'm just going to increase the darks a little bit. The lights, I'll bring that up a fraction. The shadows, leave that as is. You've got this one here called detail. You can add a little bit of sharpening to your design, so this amount slider here. You can play around with all these other settings. And another one to play around with, if you head into the effects tab, you've got this dehaze option. If you drag it to the left, it will add a haze over your design, which could look really good in some snow scenes. Okay, or you drag it to the right and it sort of reduces the haze from your scene. So always like to just drag it to the left a little bit, see what that looks like with a bit of haze. I'll just add a fraction. Okay, let's go back into the basic tab. And so what I want to do now is just quickly go over this filter here, the graduated filter, and how that works. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here, Control minus or Command minus to zoom out. And the way this works, if I just select this filter here, or hit G on the keyboard, the shortcut key. Now if I say click and drag down the bottom here, it's going to create this, this gradient. Okay, and at the moment it's not really doing anything. Okay, it's because it adopts the settings that you set in this on this side here with all these options. So if I just drag these all back to 0, and let's say if I increase the temperature, you can see how it's added. I'm just zoom in a bit here. It's added a warm, some warmness here. If I drag to, whoops, if I bring this temperature down, see it's adding blue. If I decrease the exposure, makes that darker or lighter. And you see it's in the form of a gradient. So where I started to draw on the gradient is where the effects are going to be applied at 100%, and then it's going to sort of fade off here. And you can drag these handles to make changes. So if I just click on this this red dot and move that around, I can scale up that gradient, or I can crush it down. So these gradients are a great way to just fine tune the lighting a bit. So I want this corner to be much darker. So I'm just going to drag this exposure handle, I'll bring that down. Okay, I can lower the contrast as well. I could also play around with the whites, crush that down a bit. Okay, and I'll zoom out here, and I can then start creating more gradients. So if I drag out another gradient here, you can see that's kept the same settings. Okay, but you can change the settings per gradient that you create. So you can see this white dot here, that's the other gradient that we created before. To access it, all you need to do is click on it. You can see that white haze, that's just giving you an indication of where that gradient has been created and the area that it's affecting. So if I click on that you can see that it's activated that gradient again, and we can go back here and adjust these settings. So turn down the clarity, the dehaze, turn that down a bit. To access this other gradient, I'll just click on that. Hold that down a bit. I'm going to create another gradient, so I'm just going to click and drag, create one going across here. Okay, but this one I want to be a bit brighter because I want the light source to be quite strong from the left side. So I'm going to drag this exposure up. Contrast, I'll bring that up a bit. The highlights, I'm just going to reduce it a bit, so I'm just going to zoom in so the highlights aren't so blown out. Okay, now to revert to these settings where we can play around with the entire design, not just with the gradients, you can either hit the hand tool here or hit H on the keyboard, and that will deselect all the gradients, and then we've got the settings to play around with the overall design. And to access the gradients again, just click on the graduated filter, okay, and you can see all the gradients here, which you can just click on and access again. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of sharpening to this. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. Alright, so we've got our settings applied. So now if I turn this layer on and off, you can see the before and after. So this is the before, and that's after I've played around with some of the settings in the camera raw filter. Okay, now let's compare this against the original. So if I just select this top layer, shift select down to the bottom, Control Command G to group it, and I'll turn that on and off, you can see the before and after. So a huge difference with just a couple minutes work. Okay, when you get the hang of the camera raw filter and using these actions, you can create winter scenes really, really fast. So let me just get set up for the rain example using this same photo. Alright, so in this next part of the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the rain action, and again we're going to use the camera raw filter to create some lighting effects. So the rain action is very simple to use. Just select it, click on it, and you get a window pop up in a couple of seconds, which I'll just wait for. Okay, so you get this window pop up here, and it just says in the next window, 1. Use the angle slider to adjust the direction of the rain. 2. Use the distance slider to adjust the length of the raindrops. And a tip here, it says use a distance amount of between 20 and 50. A value above 50 will create very long but faint rain. And then the bottom of it just says click continue below to proceed. So all you need to do here is click continue, and you get this motion blur window pop up. Okay, and so this is where you can adjust the angle and the distance of the the length of the raindrops. So to adjust the angle, all you need to do here is click around on this wheel, and you can see it updates the angle of the rain. So I want it to be falling this direction. Okay, and here's the distance. So you can see as I increase the distance, the length of the raindrops increase. But just be wary that when you start going to huge lengths like this, the rain will appear very faint. Okay, but I'll show you a workaround to fix that. So we're just going to go, let's say 39. Click OK, and the action will take about another 15 seconds. So I'll just wait for that. Okay, right at the end of the action, again you get just another tips window pop up, so I'll be talking through this stuff anyway, so that's just for your reference. So click continue, and you can see the rain has been generated at that angle. Okay, so we've got the rain folder here, very simple. If I turn them all off, what I'll do, I'll just create a black background above my photo so we can see a bit clearer. So there's the rain. If I turn them all off, you got the tiny raindrops in the bottom, and small, medium, large, and this top one here, rain mist, is the blurred out rain. Looks a bit like mist, so you can use that if you want. You can turn it off if you don't want it. If you want a particular size to appear more prominent, just select it, hit Control or Command J, duplicate it over and over, and you can see that the rain starts to become much clearer. So I'm just going to delete that black layer. So what I might do is actually select the rain folder and hit Control or Command J to duplicate it, make it pop a bit more. I'm going to lower the opacity of it and then just increase it a little bit. Okay, so that's the visibility that I want. I'm just going to collapse that. Now what I want to do is apply the rain splash brush that was included in the download. So if I just hit B, access the brush tool, right click, right down the bottom here you've got the rain splash brush. So select that. Okay, and create a new layer and just call it rain splash. Okay, and make sure white is your color, and all you want to do here is start brushing on where you want the splash to appear. Okay, so a bit on the hand here, through here. And if you brush on a section that's like that you don't want, or it's too bright, just have your fingers on Control or Command Z to undo it quickly. And hit E just to erase something you don't want. Right, I'm in here. And use the left and right square brackets to adjust the size of the splash. Okay, that'll do. So what we want to do is have a look at the example. Where is it? Okay, so you can see we've got some lighting coming from the top corner here, and it's a bit of a warm light, and you can see as it comes down it fades off, and this corner is quite dark. Okay, so let's jump into the camera raw filter. So I'm going to merge all these layers onto, actually no, before we do that I'm going to apply some color. So I'm going to create all the colors, and let's just go down and pick some colors that we want. So I might use a little bit of 3. I'll use a little bit of 9. Excuse me. Okay, so I'll just keep it, might increase 3 just a little bit. Alright, so I'll shift select all those, Control click the ones that I want to deselect them and delete those, so they're my colors. So now I'm going to merge the design onto one layer, so Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E, filter, camera raw filter, and let's just start playing around with some of these settings. So firstly, let's increase the brightness a bit. Let's increase the contrast, clarity, let's boost that up. Okay, what I want to focus on now is creating that light. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a bit. Now to do that, we're going to use this one here called the radial filter. Okay, it works very similar to the graduated filter. Just select it and start dragging out. You'll see it will create a radial. You can filter and you can adjust the size of it there. So because I want this to sort of be shooting down here on an angle, not completely round, I'm just going to drag out a long one like this. And then you can see as I move my mouse around the top edges of it, you've got those arrows appearing. That's just the rotation arrows. So if I click and drag on that, it will rotate that. And I'm going to grab this green marker and I'm just going to push it up here. I can scale that out a bit more. Like that. Now if I hit Control or Command 0, that'll fit the image to screen. Now let's play around with these settings. So I'm just going to reset these. Now what I want to do is increase the temperature because I wanted, let's open the example, I want a warm light coming from the top here. So let's, whoops, to 0. Let's increase the temperature. Let's also increase the exposure. I might just increase this bit. Let's play around with the contrast. I'll just reduce contrast a bit. What I'm going to do now is zoom out a bit. I'm going to create another one in the top corner here. So I'll hit H to deselect that. I'll grab it again, and I'm just going to drag out one here. I'll just reshape. Whoops! I'm just going to reshape that. So in this one, I'm going to increase the contrast quite a bit. And if you go down the bottom here, you've got this option called feather. If I drag that all the way to 0, you'll see how it's got a really hard edge now with all those settings we applied. Feathering just softens it out, so I'm going to soften that right out. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's just lower down that intensity a bit. Okay, it's looking good. I'm going to hit H to deselect that. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to grab the graduated filter now. I'm going to drag that out here. I want this corner to be darker, so I'm just going to reset these settings. I'm just going to add a little bit of coolness to it. I'm going to lower the exposure. Okay, zoom out. I'm just going to create another one here, not as dark. Another one there. H. Okay. I might jump back into the settings of these. I think the color is a little bit too strong. I'm going to grab this, click on this top one, activate that. This one here, I'm going to click on that and just sort of spread that out a bit. Okay, looking good. Let's jump into the hit H, into the effects. Just increasing the dehaze a bit here. You've also got this option down the bottom here called post-crop vignetting. So if you drag it to the left, it will add a vignette around the design. I'll come back to that in a sec. I'll show a good way we can use that. So if I apply the vignette here, you can see how it darkens up my light source at the top here. I don't want that, but I like how it's adding a vignette around sort of everything else. So I'll show in a sec how we can fix that. So that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to hit Q, compare that. So there's our original on the left, and here is what we're working on at the moment. See the split screen, so huge difference. Looks much better. So that is looking good. I'm going to click OK. Right, so now I want to apply that vignette. So what I want to do is apply it on a different layer. So if I just hit Control-Command-J, you can see it's just duplicated our layer there. Now if I go back into the camera raw filter, we can jump straight into the vignetting, and I can lower that. Okay, and I'll click OK. But all I want to do here is mask away that corner. So if I just add a mask, okay, I grab my black brush. I always include a soft brush in the top left hand corner, which is just ideal for brushing onto masks. So just grab that, and I'm just going to increase the size here, and I'm going to brush that away. So you can see now, if I lower the opacity of this layer, you can see how that vignette is only affecting those corners. Alright, that's looking pretty cool. I think I'm done. I probably would have spent a bit more time focusing on these splashes and how they appeared, adjusting their sizes and stuff like that. So let's shift select all these layers and groups, Control-Command-G, compare that against the original. So there's our original, and there is with the rain action applied, the rain splash brushes, and also some playing around with the camera raw settings. Okay, so next what I'm going to be working through is we're going to be working with this photo. Okay, so I'll put a link to this one down below, and we're going to recreate this scene from scratch. Okay, so let me just get that set up. Alright, so the first thing we want to do here is brush on all of our snow. So if I flick to the result, you can see all the painting on snow here throughout the trees and on the ground. So we're going to work on that first. So firstly, let's create a new layer, okay? And just like how I explained before, we want to brush snow onto different portions, and we're going to break this up into like color groups and sections. So you can see the rocks here are, you know, a very similar color. Now we've got the trees, they're a different color. You've got the ground along here. So let's focus on the rocks first. So if I just hit B, grab that soft brush and make sure white is our active color. And all I'm going to do is start brushing white on top of the rocks. Okay. Just like that. Now double click on this layer, and again we're going to play with this this slider here, the underline layer. So if I start dragging it to the right, you can see it starts removing our white layer from the shadows, or this color range from the layer below. So just drag that to the right until you get to something that looks pretty good. So I think right about there looks good, and then use Alt or Option and click on those arrows to separate them, and that will start smoothing out the result. So that looks pretty good. Okay, click OK. And if you want, you can rename these layers as you go. So you can call this one like Rocks Right. Okay, let's create a new layer. Control Shift N or Command Shift N. And this time we are going to focus on, hit B, the trees. So as I'm brushing here, I'm using the left and right square brackets to adjust the size. So as I get to large areas here, I've got a huge brush. When I get to the top of the trees, I'm using a narrow brush. So yeah, just use the left and right square brackets as you go. Don't worry about getting the brushing too accurate around the trees. You'll see as I go on throughout the tutorial how it all sort of comes together and blends well. Okay, so here, right, that'll do. So let's double click on that layer and drag this to the right. Okay, I'm going to smooth that out, Alt or Option. I think that looks good. So you can see at the top of the trees here how some sections haven't really blended well at all. So what I like to do, particularly with tree lines, is I'll apply a mask to that layer, and I'll start brushing away the areas that haven't blended well. But what I like to do is also use the if I right click with the brush tool out, I like to brush into the mask with some of these cloud brushes. So if I select that and start brushing into it, you can see it sort of gives the appearance that it's just mist at the top of the trees. Okay, and you can revert to, if I right click, I can switch over to my normal round brush, and if I just hit 5 on the keyboard with my brush out, it will adjust the opacity of the brush to 50%. So that way I'm brushing much softer. Okay, like around here, around there. Hit 2, it's at 20%, so now it's very soft. Okay, so now you can see at the tree line, it sort of gives the appearance that there's a little bit of mist around the trees. And you can see as I start, when I get on to changing the colour of the background and adding some more cloud brushes in, that'll just blend really well. So again, the advantage of splitting these snow layers into different sections is that we can focus on them individually. So, so I want to go back into this one, double click on that, and maybe I want to add a lot more snow, drag it to the left. Okay, so let's keep going. I won't bother renaming these layers for the moment. I'll just create a new layer, hit B, turn up my opacity 90%. Let's focus on this section here, these rocks. Okay, let's do this section here. Okay, that'll do for the moment. I can come back to these at any time and adjust their settings, so let's just get the stuff brushed on. So I'm going to focus on through here, around to just to here for the moment. That'll do, just a little bit. Okay, let's focus on these brown bushes here. Just this section. So I'm just going to apply a mask. Okay, I'm going to just brush away a little bit here. I'm just going to hit 5 on the keyboard, 50% opacity. Just brush that away. Okay, let's get going. I'm going to do this whole tree line here, all the way up to this corner. Okay, let's see what we get here. Okay, I might need to focus on this section with 2 different layers, so I'm going to apply that one. I'm going to use a mask, and I'm just going to use a brush at 30% opacity and just brush that away a little bit. Up here hasn't blended too well. Now what I might do is focus on trying to get a bit more snow in those darker areas. So let's create another layer. And where it hasn't been applied too well, I'm just going to fill in those areas. Alright, again, let's see what we get. Okay, not too bad. I think we'll just leave it at that for the moment. Okay, let's keep moving. I won't worry about the foreground part here. So let's create another layer. Let's focus on the background here. So let's just start brushing at the top here. Okay. I'm just going to hold Alt or Option from the start here and drag that across. All the way across there, so you can see it's added like a white mist over everything. Drag this one in. Yeah, and click OK. You can see how it hasn't blended well here, so I'm just going to grab a mask. B, brush that away. This one here, I'm going to go to the mask and just brush that away a bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. What I want to do now, let's group all these. Control G to group them, and I'm just going to call this Painted Snow. Okay, let's go ahead and apply some cloud brushes. So above our painted snow, it's very important that this, when you're brushing on the snow using this underline layer technique, that it is just above your background layer. Okay, it's very important. So everything else created on top of this painted snow folder. Just create a new layer. Hit B, right click to access our brushes. I'm going to grab one of these, and I'm just going to scale this brush right up. Actually, I'll brush that on, so I'll do it again. Brush that on at 100% opacity. Move that to the top here. Okay, let's create another one. And just remember to create each brush on a different layer, so you can control their position, rotation separately. Let's go this one here. This one. Okay, I think that will do. What I might jump to is I'm going to go back to these rocks here and see if we can add a bit more snow into those. So I'm going to go inside my painted snow folder and just identify where that section is. This one, we double click and drag this one. More snow there. Okay, looking good. Now what I might do here is duplicate the background, Control Command J. I'm just going to take out some of the colour, so I'm just going to hit Control Command U and just lower the saturation down a bit. Okay, take out some of those greens. Alright, I'm going to group these layers and just call them clouds. Now the next step is I want to apply snow, so I'm just going to open up the actions panel, going to click on the snow action, and I'm going to play the snow, and I'll just speed up the video to get to the result. Okay, the snow has been applied. It's a bit too faint because everything is quite white, so what I'm going to do is just select the snow folder, hit Control J, duplicate it. I might duplicate it again. Okay, I'm going to lower the opacity of this top folder just down a little bit. Okay, I might just lower this down a fraction as well. That'll do. Alright, so there's our snow. Now the next step is I want to add some color options, so I'm just going to go into the actions panel. I'm going to play the create all colors action. Okay, so I'm going to flip through some of these. I think number 9 is suitable. So 9 is good for this one. I'm going to turn on 1. I'm just going to add a little bit of that. Whoops. Just a fraction. I think that'll do for the moment. So let's shift select all those, control click or command click the ones we want to keep, delete the rest of them. Okay, so we're looking good. I'm just going to shift select all these and group them, and it's going to compare against the original. So there's our original, that's what we've got so far. Okay, so I'm going to delete that group. Now we want to play around with the camera raw settings. So again, flatten, merge our design onto one layer. Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E. Okay. Filter, camera raw filter. Now let's start playing around with some of these settings. So let's increase the clarity. And sharpen everything up a bit. Let's check out the exposure. I might bring that down a bit. The whites, leave that, highlights, it's looking good. Temperature, let's just cool this down a bit, add a bit more blue. Let's jump into, let's play around with these settings here. What I like to do is just swivel these from left to right. It gives you just a little preview of that setting changed. So let's lower that down a bit. Actually, no, we'll keep it there. This one will lower down a bit. Turn that up. Let's go into the FX tab. Play around with the dehaze slider here. Vignetting. I don't think we'll use that. I don't think we need to apply any graduated filter or radial filters here. I think the lighting looks pretty good. If anything, what you could do is use that kind of like the vignette. We could drag out a big, say we want our focal point to be this area here. So I'm just going to zero those out, just highlight a number here and just hit 0, then keep hitting tab, then 0, so tab 0, all the way down. Okay, we'll zero that out. So now if I drag this slide to the left, you can see that it's darkening inside of the circle, but I actually want it to darken outside of the circle. So to do that, right down the bottom here under feather, just click on outside, and that way it'll apply the settings on the outside of the circle. So I can just lower that down a bit, so it just helps bring our focal point around this guy here and just ahead of him. Okay, H to deselect that and revert back to our normal image. So let's compare before and after. Okay, so before is up the top, after is down the bottom. So you can see a lot of the whites have been sort of crushed down a bit. It's a bit more contrasted. Okay, get out of that. So let's click on OK. Alright, so that is looking good. Now if I've run the camera raw filter and I'm looking at these rocks and going, oh, I wish I had more snow on those rocks. So unfortunately what you might have to do is either delete the camera raw layer, okay, and then jump back into the painted snow, find out where the rocks are, this one here, adjust the settings, and then go back into the camera raw filter and apply those settings again. Or what you might be able to do is grab that rocks layer and drag that above this layer here. So now this white layer is looking at the underlying layer, which is this layer here, okay, our camera raw layer. So if I double click on this, I can now play around with the setting of that layer again, and you can see that it's adding more snow to that section. Okay, and if there's any areas that are a bit blown out like that, again, just use the mask. With a soft opacity, start brushing, brush that away. Okay, but I don't think this needs it. I like this amount of snow. Okay, so that's it. What I might do just quickly is go to camera raw filter and just add some sharpening. Alright. So if anything else, what I would have spent a bit more time on is making sure, getting these clouds to look a bit better in the background here, and brushing more clouds around the tree line here, and spending a bit of time focusing on getting the snow looking really good with those through the layers, this underlying layer slider. Okay. Yeah, so let's compare that against the original. Shift select all those, Control Command G. So there is our original photo, and there's our result. So it's just a really quick, easy way to completely transform your images into freezing cold winter scenes. Okay, so next I'm going to work with this photo, and I'll put the link down below so you can download that and follow along as well. And we're going to use the same techniques, and we're going to convert this one into a winter scene. Okay, so let me get that set up. So in this example, we're going to use the same techniques to convert this photo here into a winter scene. So again, I will put the link to this photo down below so you can download it and follow along with me. So firstly, we need to start brushing on our snow. Okay, so again, create a new layer above our background layer, Control Shift N or Command Shift N. Hit B, activate the brush tool, right click, make sure you got the soft brush selected. Make sure white is your active brush. And firstly, we're going to work on this in sections. So we're going to focus on the stairs here first. So I'm going to just make sure my opacity is at 100%. Going to start brushing white over the stairs. Okay, and we'll go all the way down to the footpath. Stop about there. Okay, so double click on the layer and start dragging this slider here to the right, and you can see I'll just use Alt or Option to smooth it out. So that looks pretty nice. I'll leave it like that. It's a little bit too strong down here, so what I might do, I'll grab a mask, put a mask on the layer, I'll brush black to remove this, okay, and I'll just do the ground here separately. So I'm going to create a new layer, B, start brushing away. Okay, start lowering this, I'll smooth it out, so that looks a bit better. Okay, let's keep going, create a new layer. Just going to work on this little patch of grass here. Alright, that looks good. Keep going, create a new layer. Let's work on all the plants here. So we'll just brush white over this section. Okay, let's see that. Oops. Okay, that looks good. And what you can also do, you can start brushing white onto that layer again, even after you've applied this blending style. So if I just grab the white brush and I start brushing away, you can see that it still adopts that same setting. So I can start brushing white over this section. Okay, but you can see how I'm brushing over this black section here and it's doing nothing. That's why it's best to group these layers into different color groups. So for example, like these green vines going up the wall, I would group them together. The white I would group on another layer. The black door would be another layer. Okay, so I'm just going to start brushing in here, and you can see how it's getting into dark area here and not much white has been applied. So I'll work on that on a different layer. So I'll do that now, create a new layer, and I'll start brushing into this section, these dark areas. Down here as well. Okay, let's see that. Okay, that looks good. I'll smooth that out. Click OK. Alright, let's move on to the bike. A new layer. And I'm just going to use a thin brush and just go around the edges of the bike. Okay. That looks good. Alright, let's do this black post here. A new layer. Okay, looking good. Let's do this tree to the right hand side here. Alright, let's now jump to, let's do these vines going up the wall. looks good. Let's do this other side. Okay, let's do this patch here. And you don't need to, pause the video and copy my exact settings here with the underlying layer. Just drag it, get to something you think looks good, a good amount of snow, and then yeah, separate it using Alt or Option, which will just smooth out the result. That looks good. Let's now work on. Let's do the. Oh no, I've got this top corner. Actually, I might be able to just brush white because it's a similar color to this plan here. So if I just brush white, it should start appearing. It does, but I could probably do a little bit more. So I'm going to create a new layer. Start brushing again. Okay. Let's do the wall now. So create a new layer. Oops. Okay. Start brushing away. It doesn't matter if you accidentally intersect with the door here, because we can use mask to erase or to hide that. Okay, let's see what we get here. Okay, that looks good. Doesn't look too accurate to this section here, so I'm just going to apply a mask. Going to hit B, make sure black is my active color because we want to hide it. Going to hit 5 on the keyboard, change the opacity to 50%, and I'm just going to start brushing away a little bit. I'm going to hit 2 on the keyboard, 20% opacity, just lower the opacity of the brush. If you really wanted to fine tune this section, you could just zoom right in and paint more accurately into these gaps and yeah, play around with the blends there. Okay, let's do this plant down the bottom here. I'll do the box first because it's a different color to the bush there. That's good. We'll do this little box by the front door. Oops. Right, let's do the front door. Actually, what I might do here is just grab the pen tool, hit P, and we're going to just click from corner to corner here. Just like that, hit enter, oops, control or command enter to make it turn into a selection. Now to fill a selection with the foreground color, you hold down Alt Delete or Option, Alt Backspace or Option Backspace. So make sure white is your active color, that'll fill that selection. Alright, so now just double click on the layer and we'll blend it again. Okay, looks alright. I can see a bit of a hard edge here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to apply a mask, grab a black brush and just start brushing away the edges. Okay, that's good enough. Let's do all these pink frames now. So will I grab the pen tool? Yes. Oh yeah, we'll do it. So I'll just click around here. Control or Command Enter to turn it to a selection, and I'll fill that with white. Looks good. And what I might do is start brushing what, because it's a similar colour, these are the frames. I'm just going to grab a white brush and start brushing onto that frame. And you can see how I'm brushing at that black section and it's not doing anything, it's just applying it to the pink frame. It's because we've defined the colour range through the slider here. That's why it's important you create, you work on different sections of your photo and create them all on different layers. So again, I've got my finger on the left and right square brackets as I go along, just constantly changing my brush size. Alright, let's now do the windows. Creating our layer again, and just brush over the window. I want to try to give this window like a frosted look. So, we'll brush this one here. Down there. Over there. There we go. We'll do this little pot here by the window. Alright. I'm going to work on all this dark, because it's a similar tone throughout here, apart from the bike. I should be able to just brush white over all this dark area. And it should do a reasonable job of excluding the bike. So drag this down. Not doing the greatest job of getting that dark area, but we'll just leave it as is. I'm just going to create a mask and just brush away over the bike. Okay, let's now do, I'll just work out which layer was that pot layer, which is this one. There's another bit of, there's another pot here, so I can just grab my white brush and start brushing onto that one, because it's using the same layer style as the other pot. We'll do this plant here in the corner. So as you can see, it's really easy to do, but depending on how complex your scene is and how many different sections you break it up into, it just takes a little bit of time, but it's really easy to do. Okay, I don't like that little corner there, so I'm going to apply a mask. I'm just going to brush that away. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I think we've covered most areas. No, I'll just do this little bit of concrete by the front door. Alright, that's looking good. I'm going to now just group all this. So shift select all those layers, Control G, and I'm just going to call it Painted Snow again. You can call it whatever you want. Now let's apply some snow. So we'll go open up the actions panel, we'll click on the snow action. I'm going to apply that, and I'll just speed the video up a bit. Okay, I'll just close the tips message down. So let's collapse the snow folder, and I'm going to duplicate again because it's not too visible in this image. So hit Control or Command J on the snow folder, and you see it starts to build up. I might even do it again. Okay, it's looking good. So I'm going to duplicate the background layer because I want to remove a little bit of the color. So hit Control or Command J on the background color, and Control or Command U to bring up the hue and saturation window here. So just drag that saturation to the left, and that will start to remove some of the color. Alright, now I'm going to click on the top snow folder here, and I'm going to run the create all colors action. And for this one, I think I'll go for color 9. I think we might just keep color 9. Yep, so shift select all those, Control or Command click the one we want to keep to deselect it and delete all the other layers. Alright, now just above the painted snow layer, I'm going to create a new layer, and we're going to brush on some mist. So just grab any one of the mist brushes, make sure white is your active color, and you can brush these wherever you want. I'm just going to create one big one there, sort of move it down the bottom. Whoops, move down the bottom here. Just remember to create each brush on a new layer, so Control Command Shift N, right click to get up the brush panel, and just go for this one. Move this one up the top here, lower the opacity down a bit. Create another layer. I'll just use the same brush, lower that opacity right down. It's just a very subtle hint of mist. Alright, we're looking good. I'm just going to flick over to our other one. So that was, you can see there's a lot more contrast in this, but pretty accurate so far. So we're going to change up the colors and contrast again in the Camera Raw settings. So select the top folder, Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E, merge our design onto one layer. Filter, Camera Raw filter, and let's have a look at what we got. So let's lower the exposure a bit. It's a little bit too bright. Let's play around with the contrast. We'll just add a little bit. Let's turn up the clarity. Just a fraction. The temperature, let's add a little bit of blue in, a bit more colder. I'll jump to the FX tab and play around with the dehaze setting. That'll do. Let's have a look. We'll jump to the tone curve, and I'm just going to adjust the play around with the highlight setting here. Okay, I don't think we need to apply any of these filters. Well, what I might do, I'll zoom out a bit. We might apply a radial filter, and we'll put it around this light here. So I'm just going to draw that out around the light. Okay, Control or Command 0 to fit your image to screen. Okay, let's play around with the settings here. So we're going to darken everywhere around the light, so it just makes it look like the light is on, just a little bit. And we're going to make it a little bit cooler around the edges. The whites we might just crush a little bit. Okay, I'm going to hit H to revert back to the settings for the overall image. Let's hit Q to compare that against the original. So left is the original, right is the one we're working on. Okay, keep hitting Q, cycle through the different views. Okay, I'm going to jump back to the dehaze filter, check that out again. Add a little bit of haze. And I think that's looking good, so I'm going to jump back here. I'll try a bit more clarity and just a little bit of sharpening, and click OK. So there we go. I'm going to shift select all of these and group them, Control Command G, and so there is our original, and there's our winter scene. So all you need to do is apply these same techniques across any photo, and you'll get the hang of it really quick, and you'll be able to convert your scenes into winter scenes in under 10 minutes. It's really simple. So next up, I'm going to demonstrate the day to night action across 3 different examples. I'm just going to use some masking techniques, and again we're going to look at the camera raw filter to play around with some lighting. So I'll set that up. Alright, so now let's take a look at the day to night action. It's very simple to use, so open up the actions panel. You've got your day to night action here, just click play, and it'll just take a few seconds. You'll get the tips window pop up just for your future reference. Okay, I'll click on stop, and I'll hide the actions panel. Zoom in a bit here, and let's have a look what we got. So we've got the day to night folder, so here is the original. Actually, I might zoom out. There's our original, and there's the day to night. Okay, so if we go inside the folder, there's a few different layers here, and I'll turn them all off for a second, and I'll go down to the bottom here and talk to you about what they all do. So we've got this layer here called desaturate. It removes, you can see the opacity of this layer is at 80%, so it's removing 80% of the colour, because at night you don't see too much colour, apart from a bit of a blue overtone from the moon. You got your darken overall image, so if I click on that, you see this layer crushes down the brightness of our photo, and if you double click on this layer, the way I've done that is it's a curves adjustment layer, and I've grabbed this handle here and brought it right down. So if I drag this up to the top corner, that's pretty much our normal photo. So this corner here focuses on the highlights of our photo, and down the bottom here is the shadows. So I'm taking the highlights and I'm just crushing them all the way down. Okay. Now this one here focuses on the highlights as well, but it restricts them solely to the highlights. So you can see I've got this mask here. If you hold down Alt or Option and click on the mask, you can go inside. So you can see I've restricted this layer to only affect the brightest points of the photo. So again, if I double click on this, I've just brought down this right hand side anchor point. So if I bring this up to the top, you can see, and I start to bring it down, you can see how it's crushing the highlights. If I bring it all the way down, it's made our highlights black. So just by default, I have crushed the highlights a little bit, so you can play around with that slider there. Just a little tip, if you bring this down, if you want to bring the highlights down a lot more, you're going to have to just quickly revert to the darken overall image and then start dragging this one down as well, just so that the two match up correctly. Okay, so undo that. So that's those two. The sharpening, if you turn that on, you see if I turn that on and off, see how it just makes the details pop a bit more. Okay, I've got in brackets there opacity, so play around with the opacity of that layer. Currently it's at it was at 50%, so you can crank that up to 100 if you want the details to be much sharper. Color tone is what casts the color over our photo. So you can just double click on this box here. You can use this layer here to quickly make your photo darker. So if I just click down here, it's going to create a much darker blue, and you can see it's darkened up our entire image. So because everyone's photos are going to be different, some of your photos you open up might be really bright, others really dark. So if you run the night action on a reasonably dark photo, by default it might be this dark. So all you need to do is click on this layer here, and click around on a lighter color. And you can also jump into these and drag these handles up higher to make it brighter. And then you've got this layer here, contrast, again in opacity. So if I turn that on, that's what really brings it all together. It just adds a lot of contrast to our design. And if I go inside the mask here, okay, it's only adding contrast to the dark parts of our photo, and it's ignoring the highlights, okay, because we focus on the highlights on different layers. Okay, so you can play around with the opacity of that. Alright, so that's just a quick overview of the day to night action. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to open up the next example, and we're going to work on some masking techniques. So I'm just going to close this down, and I'm going to open up this photo here, because what we're going to do is, let me just open up the result. So what we're going to do, we're going to run the day to night action, but we want to keep this original light source, and we want to do a little bit of light painting to spread this light down here. You can see we're going to add the snow action as well, and I'm going to point out an important thing to know about if you want to run the snow or rain action as well as the day to night action. Okay, so let's just jump straight into it. Okay, so firstly let's run the day to night action. Let's get that happening. Click OK. So you can see straight away, it's made everything dark. We've gone to night time, but you can see it's also crushed down the colours of our light. So it's removed the brightness from our light here. So we need to get that back. Okay, and you might have some city or street scenes where it's on dusk, the street lights are on, but you want everything to be really dark, but you want those street lights to still be showing. So the way to do that, it's very simple. We want to use the mask for this day to night folder, because if we turn off the folder, you can see we get our original photo. So all I want here is the original light and a bit of this light spread here. So if I select the mask here and I hit B, I'll right click, I'll get my soft brush. If I start brushing black, all we're doing is hiding whatever's in that folder, okay, and it's falling down to the layer below, which is our original background. So I just brush a big spot here over the light. You can see we've got our light back. Okay, now if I start brushing around here, you can see it looks like the light is spread, but it's not too realistic, so we're going to undo that and work on that a bit. So it's all in the mask. So I'm going to change the brush size, use left and right square brackets. I'm just going to brush a little bit there. I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm just going to hit 4 on the keyboard, and I'm just going to brush a bit more here. I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard, so I'm only brushing at 10% opacity now, very soft. So I'm just going to add a little bit out through here. Okay, through there. Maybe the light touches a little bit up here on the tree, and maybe just a fraction here. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I might just brush a little bit there. Alright, so what I want to do now is create some snow. So I'm going to play the snow action, and I'll fast forward the video. Okay, I'll close this window down, close the actions panel. So you can see straight away that the snow doesn't blend too well with our design. It's because the white snow is sitting on top of our day to night folder, so it's not adopting the colours and the brightness that the day to night has. So the way to do that, all you need to do is grab the snow folder, and this can be the rain as well if you run the rain action. Just drag this below the colour tone layer, and straight away you can see that it has adopted the brightness, see the contrast from the day to night, and also the colour. So you can see the snow's gone to a bit of some bluish tones. Okay, and I can adjust the opacity of this snow folder now if I want it to be a bit more subtle. Okay, and if you want it to be a bit less blue, you can drag this to a more of a greyish tone. Okay, so what we want to do now is just focus on the lighting a bit more. I don't want these snow particles to appear as bright around the corners here. Alright, and I want it to be a little bit darker here. So we're going to use we're going to jump into the camera raw filter. So merge, select the top folder here and merge your design onto one layer. Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E. Filter, camera raw filter. I'm just going to zoom out, Control or Command minus. And I'm going to grab the radial filter, and we're going to start off by just drawing a circle around here. But I don't want, whatever we do here, well, firstly let's play around with the lighting. So I'm going to drag this box down. I'm just going to squish it a bit, extend it out there. So now we've got this radial filter in place. We can play around again with the So remember, if you're playing around with the radial filter and you're adjusting the settings and it's affecting the outside of the area that you created, go down the bottom here and make sure you switch to inside, because I want to focus within that area. I'm just going to feather this out more, and let's play around this. Maybe want to add a little bit of warming, so it's a bit of an orange light. Okay, I want everything to be a bit more visible, a bit clearer, so let's turn up the clarity so you can clearly see the clarity working there. Alright, I'm going to hit H to deselect that. Now what I might do is create another one. I'm going to draw that around this area here. Okay, and so that's just adopted the settings of our previous filter there, and I've just put that over the light so it's a bit brighter. Okay, I'm going to zoom out, and now I'm going to create another one. Might just leave it about there, and I'm going to switch this to affect the outside. Okay, and I'm going to reset all these, so just hit 0, tab as I go down. Okay, I want everything to appear a little bit darker around the outside. I'm going to remove the contrast. I'm just going to zoom in a bit here. Now I want to remove the whites a bit, so the snow is a bit too strong. So we should be able to attack the whites here if I just drag this slider down. Maybe also the highlights as well. So you can see the colour is starting to leave now from the snow. I'm going to adjust this a bit more. Okay. The temperature, let's make it just a little bit cooler around the edges. H to deselect that. So that is looking pretty good. Let's now turn up the overall clarity. Let's just play around with these settings for a second. Just turn up the exposure a little bit. Jump to the tone curve, I'll experiment with these. Okay, I'll jump to the FX tab, we'll check out the dehaze. I think we'll just leave that at 0. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to set that, click OK. And I'll group these two, compare that against our original. So there's our original photo, and there's with the day and the night, the snow action, and also some masking applied to our folder here, because without the masking we would not be able to bring back our light. We've got that there, and then we've fine-tuned it with the camera raw filter. Alright, so I've got one more example to go, and again it's just working with the day to night filter, and we'll also jump into the camera raw So the day to night action, and then we'll jump into the camera raw settings and play around with some lighting again. Alright, so this is the last example we'll work through. Again, I'll put the link to this photo down below, you can follow along. So what we're going to do is run the night action, and it's going to make everything dark, but we're going to add some light throughout our design, so it looks like the light is coming down through the top of the waterfall here, and it's also trickling down through the water here. So let's now go back to the original photo. Let's open up the actions panel and run the day to night action. Okay, so everything is now dark. So what we want to do is, well, if you want, you can play around with the settings here, but I think we'll leave it as it is because we'll add some lighting in. Actually, what I might do is make this a little bit more blue. Okay, just a little bit. We'll leave those settings. So we'll merge this all into one layer because we want to jump into the camera raw filter. Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E. Filter, camera raw filter. So what we want to do here is work with these two filters here. So firstly, I'm going to zoom right out. I'm going to create a radial filter, and so this is going to be a light that comes down to the top of the waterfall and shoots down through the ferns here. So we need a long one like this. I need to rotate this into position, so I'm just going to swivel that around and move that to about there. Okay, so now with that selected, whatever we do in here will affect the we want the inside of that filter. Okay, so I need to reset all these, so I'm just going to put all these back to 0. So let's crank up the exposure so you can see the light starting to come in now. Let's just make it a little bit colder. We might spread this out just a little bit. Okay, contrast. Clarity, we'll just turn the clarity up a fraction. Okay, I'm going to zoom out again, and I'm going to create another one. Okay, as you can see, it is using the same settings. So as you can see, you can create as many of these filters and light different areas. You can see as I move that along, how it's lining up the ferns. So I could create, a small, if I wanted to highlight this little section here, I could just create a small filter, and it might be yeah, so you can just drag out another one, like down there, if you want. I might just keep those, looks pretty cool. But I want one coming down through here along the water. Okay, so let's drag out another one, a long one, and I'm going to move it into here, and I'm going to rotate it. It's a bit too long, and just position it over the water here. Okay. H to deselect it all. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, looking nice. So what I want is a bit of a stronger light coming up through here, so it's a bit more obvious where the light source is coming from. So I'm going to grab the radial filter. I'm going to drag out big one up here and play around with these settings. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. I'm going to bump up the overall clarity. It sort of sharpens up all the details. I'll go into the sharpening, turn it up a little bit. Let's jump to the FX tab. We'll check out the dehaze filter. Alright, I reckon that's looking pretty good. And like I said, you can focus a lot more on the lighting by creating a lot more small radial filters and plotting them around the different trees and rocks. If I wanted this rock here to be really highlighted, what I could do, just grab another radial and plonk that on top of the rock. I'll turn the feathering up a bit more. Maybe it's a bit too bright. So I can just turn it up a little bit. I can crank the contrast. Deselect that. So it doesn't really suit the image too well, because the light source is coming from down here. It looks like it's being lit from down the bottom here. But you can apply that technique through all these rocks here. So I mean, if I move this, I can move these over the rocks and focus on lighting all those up. Okay, but you can spend as much time as you want doing that. Let's click OK. Alright, that's looking pretty cool. I'll shift select these two, group them. So there's our original, and that is using the day to night action with some line adjustments in the camera raw filter. So as you can see, really easy techniques. You can create, nighttime images like this now very easily, and yeah, even creating those snow scenes. I'll just open these back up. Very simple to do. Okay, just jump back to this tutorial if you can't remember how to do it, and just follow along. Okay, and if you've got any questions, just send me an email. But if not, have a good time using all the actions. Thanks.